Today's guest is Jordan White, HQ Energy's top producing territory manager. What makes Jordan's story interesting is that he didn't come from traditional sales. Before joining HQ just over half a year ago, he was already deep into entrepreneurship, running his own kelp and seafood business. So he came in understanding pressure, ownership, risk, and what it actually takes to build something from scratch. Since joining HQ, he's climbed the ranks fast and has quickly become one of our top producing managers. In this episode, we get into entrepreneurship, sales, leadership, building confidence through action, and what the transition looks like going from running a completely different business into high-level direct sales. Jordan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome, Jordan White. We've been waiting to do this for a while, and what better time than now to finally get you on here. And we know you well, but not everybody else does. So we're excited to break it down a little bit and have some fun.
It's good to be here.
We're just going to start with who is Jordan White? Who is he? Tell the people.
Oh, man, I ask myself that question every day. I've had a bit of a unique kind of background and spent my early 20s trying to figure out what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, traveled a bunch. I kind of had a lifelong vision when I was young to be a world traveler and realized that wasn't really the life for me, and applied to Dalhousie, went to school on the East Coast for business school. I was there for a couple of years. Met some amazing people out there, some lifelong friends, but that business program wasn't really for me. It was very corporate. It was very formal. You're either going to be an accountant, you're going to be a manager, which was laughable to me, going to school to be a manager, but they didn't really favor entrepreneurship. So I was feeling a disconnect in the program. And then I'd always really not wanted to go to UVic, just being my hometown, and didn't want to come back home for school, but UVic just happened to be the right program. So did my last 2 years at UVic, and that program really favors entrepreneurship and allowed me to challenge my co-ops. It allowed me to kind of challenge the narrative of school. And through that program, I kind of built my business model and the foundation of the business that I started. I've been a fishing guide my whole life. I've been guiding since I was 17, grew up on the water. Fishing was my lifelong passion. And that's how I kind of funded myself all the way through school. And I had this burning desire to be a kelp farmer. And I really don't know where that came from. It was this calling, like it was magnetic. It had gravity and I was kind of sucked into it. So serendipitously through guiding, I'd met a really good friend and he was a coastal guy as well. And during my last year of university, I met up with him and I said, hey, I want to start this kelp business. You're a mariner, you're native to Tofino. It'd be great if we could do this together. And he said, absolutely. So we built that business. And as any business, your first idea is quickly changed to what the business actually needs to be. And obviously you got to find the dollars can be made. And we pivoted that business multiple times and grew very fast. We launched in 2021. By 2023, we were doing almost $2 million gross. We had 22 employees, but it turned into a business I didn't really want to do. Like we were really away from kelp and we were just mongering seafood and high volumes of seafood. I kind of had a chat with him and said, hey, like we're going in this direction. I really think we should pull the business back in its other direction because there's been 1,000 seafood mongers before us and there'll be 1,000 after us. And to me, there's no creativity in that. You're kind of just a commodity-based business at that point. So there were some other things that were causing friction in our relationship. We kind of had a chat and it's like, I want to go right. And he said, I want to go left. I said, well, respectfully, like, I don't want to go that route. So he ended up buying me out and took a year off, sailed across the Pacific Ocean with my dad and did some big thinking. And it was an emotional time because I had put so much of my lifeblood and my heart and soul into that business. And a guillotine had just come down and just like chopped it clean. And I was purposeless. I didn't really know. I've always been driven in some sort of direction, and to not have that was liberating, but it was also a little bit scary. I went back to guiding for a couple of years, did some traveling, worked on some personal projects on my property, and I was really finding myself yearning to get back into an industry, get back into something that I was passionate about that I could also grow in. HQ came along. I was actively seeking work. Funny enough, being an entrepreneur doesn't really translate too well on a resume. I was applying for jobs that I thought I was qualified for, if not overqualified for, and wasn't even getting a call back. I wanted to scream at these people. I'm like, I'm going to be an incredible asset for you if you just give me the time of day. But no one did. And then I interviewed with you guys and it was an immediate click. I felt fired up. You guys had an amazing vision, amazing direction you guys were heading, and that agreed with me. And then here we are.
I have to ask, thank you for that, Jordan. What the hell is a kelp farmer?
Yeah, right.
What is it?
I was thinking,
I probably picked the one industry that has zero money. Like it is so hard to make money. So the fundamental business problem with kelp and why we couldn't actually drive a kelp business and we had to lean on seafood is any sort of aquaculture farm business, there's going to be a farm gate value for that product. So if you're an oyster farmer or you're a canola farmer, there is someone at the dock or there's someone at your farm picking up your canola, it's a commodity. It's priced per pound or whatever that unit is, but there is no farm gate value for kelp. You can have a kelp farm with 500 metric tons of kelp. No one's there to buy it off you. So you have to be the processor, and then you have to be the producer of a product, and then you have to be the
Distributor.
brand and the distributor.
Yeah.
And as a small company, you have to be vertically integrated on a scale that has to kind of have economies of scale. And so your inputs are expensive. You can't really grow naturally into being a high volume kelp company because it's easy to farm, it's easy to harvest, but processing is your bottleneck. And the fact that kelp is 96.5% water, you're either drying it or you're keeping it in liquid form. And both of them have their issues. If you keep it wet, it's really heavy to transport. If you dry it, you're spending a ton of money on energy costs. So there's a fundamental business problem there.
I'm just curious about the kelp. I think I was fascinated with my partner I'm fascinated about kelp. Just before we go any further,
Okay.
Is it good for me? Like, what does it do for the average person?
It's really good for you. Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of micronutrients in there, specifically iodine. We don't get a ton of iodine in our diets. Most folks use like iodinized salt. There's quite a few other ingredients, vitamin B12. To most people though, like we don't eat kelp in our diets. It's not intuitive to us. And so as a sale, holy smokes, every time we had to sell a kelp product, there was a sale involved. I had to convince you about why you wanted to eat kelp, why you should eat kelp, what you get the benefit from, as opposed to seafood. Everyone knows what a salmon tastes like. Everyone knows what a salmon looks like. Kelp is it's a great, and I think over time we will start incorporating it into our diets more because it's such a great resource. But again, it's a hard sale.
I'm interested, Jordan. So, like you said, you had this burning desire. Who first introduced, like, I've never even heard of this before you. Who first introduced the idea of kelp farming as a concept? How'd you hear about it?
There was a guy on the East Coast that I was following for a while. He was a lobster fisherman out of, I think, Maine. And the lobster industry, prices were fluctuating. They have really great years and then low years. And then they're also managing stock. And he was kind of sitting there. He's a visionary and was realizing that this isn't really a sustainable thing he can support his family on. So he started to do what's called multi-trophic or multi-tropic integrated aquaculture, where you grow multiple different species in a single farm. So you can grow kelp and then you grow shellfish and then you get the downstream effects that feed the nutrients for the kelp. And so this guy had a model that was working and he was doing quite well. And that kind of sustainable farming model of not just doing monoculture, but doing polyculture for some reason just drew me in. And I honestly don't know where it came from, but it's kind of like the girls you fall in love with. You don't know why you fall in love with them, but you just do. It was like that for me. I just couldn't look away.
It's cool. And then modeling wise, like from a business standpoint, so you said passion, and then the monetization was the challenge. So then how, as you're pivoting and trying to adapt, how do you pivot to monetize without losing the passion? Or did you?
Kelp was 90% of our branding. It accounted for maybe 10% of our gross revenue, but then ate up 40% of our expenses. We were subsidizing our kelp ventures with seafood because we had this mission, but that's why we just naturally pulled away from it, because when you're employing 10 people to harvest and dry, and then you're only selling $60,000 of kelp a year, it just makes no sense.
What would have needed to change for you to stay in the industry?
Scale. Labor costs were our biggest input. I mean, we were doing $500,000 a year in payroll. And for a small business operating out of a 1,500 square foot facility, that's crazy. So when I wanted to go right and my business partner wanted to go left, I said, hey, like, this is a fun thing we're doing, but if we want to really be the leaders in kind of Canadian kelp industry, we have to take on more investment. We have to leave Tofino. We have to scale our processing space. We need to get onto natural gas, off of electricity, make our processing more efficient so that our margins are actually there. Because the dollar value is there. Like, we were selling a kilogram of dried kelp for $168 a kilogram. We could have farmed 500 metric tons of kelp very, very quickly, but the processing. So I said, hey, like, let's go to Port Alberta. Let's go to Nanaimo. Let's go somewhere. Let's set up a mass facility and let's commodify kelp so that it's an ingredient that we can sell internationally, because that's where the markets are. And you need to sell in bulk. You need to sell in actual serious volume. That was just not an ambition for my business partner. And that's really what needs to happen in farming in general. I mean, you see it across the board. There's not a lot of hobby farms anymore. And there's a reason why. Like, you need the same equipment that a large farm does, but it's the economies of scale that really start to make sense.
On behalf of HQ, we just want to thank your business partner so much for wanting to go right when you wanted to go left.
Sure. Cool. Okay. Well, you talked a little bit about I wrote the word down, adapting. There's a skill set in needing to adapt and change. It's almost like an undertone, and you described a bit about who you are. So how does Jordan adapt to tough scenarios, or how did he adapt from, you use the analogy of like a guillotine cutting maybe your identity off. How did you adapt to get to where you are today?
I think just through my various experiences, like everything's always changing. And the more rigid you are to change, the more difficult that change is going to be. I think just growing up, we actually moved a lot. Like I was in 7 different homes by the time I was 10 years old. And my parents are just movers and shakers. And I think just growing up, that was kind of ingrained in me just to take it day by day and be able to just find comfort in new environments. But that exit of the business was almost like a rebirth for me. Like I shaved my head. I like went off social media. It was like a physical transformation for me. And it was probably the most pivotal time in my life because it was the first time that I had a ton of knowledge and a ton of experience and a really fresh perspective and then a clean slate. I was drawing like Venn diagrams on different opportunities and I was researching markets. And at one point, I really wanted to get into like crypto and stable coins, like stablecoin rails, because I was like, oh, there's a really big future in that. And I was really just searching for something that had longevity, something that had a lot of upside and a lot of growth in, and something that I could throw myself into without having to have another revelation and like reset myself again, because I didn't want to do that. Back to your point, I think just the more flexible a human can be, especially in business, the more you're going to succeed, because being able to just pivot and move with emotions, and especially in a new industry like solar, things have changed so much even since I started. Government programs change, incentives program change, there's new players, energy prices, like there's so much of a fluid environment that if you're not able to adapt and not able to pivot, you will be left behind, or you'll be left feeling angry because you just haven't caught up with the times.
Interesting. I love that. We lightly touched on travel, but that was a big part of your past. So it's traveling and adaptation and change and comfortability around new environments. Did that play a part in who you are now?
100%.
What was it about travel? Like, why did Jordan need to on planes or boats or probably countrywide drives? Like, why the need to travel for you?
To me at that time, and I mean, it's still relevant, but it felt like the final frontier. Like I felt like I was an explorer that was every day was just so unique and so different. And you're meeting all these amazing people and you're putting yourself in these incredible places. And I was kind of a gnarly traveler. Like I was a barefoot for a year. Like I didn't wear shoes for a whole year.
That's awesome.
I was in the Amazon for like a month and a half, building like an eco village, like way in the heart of the Amazon that didn't end up being an eco village. It was like an ayahuasca retreat that some shaman was building, and nothing was getting done work wise. Like there was no work. So the shaman would come and go maybe like once or twice a week. And then I'd be with these Quechua, like jungle kind of rangers that were half carpenters, half hunters. And if there was no work to do, they would just hunt all night. So I was like, well, I'm not really doing anything. I'm just going to go hunt with you guys. And I spent better part of 3 weeks, like hunting every night from 10 until 4 a.m., hunting crocodiles and armadillos and snakes and frogs and monkeys. That was so exciting to me. And it just felt like I was just learning so much. I think travel has played a huge role in just my ability to just interpret information, assess, and then react.
Can't help but ask, you're in the Amazon, you're doing some work, supposed to be doing some work on some ayahuasca farm. Did you end up buying ayahuasca or doing ayahuasca?
I did it a couple times.
Any revelations there that transformed or changed or helped you see something that most of us don't see?
Man, I still kind of laugh about this. So I went to a place in Peru called Iquitos. It's a fly-in or boat-in community. It's like one of the most remote communities in Peru. It's like a full-on city, but there's no roads to there. I went there knowing that this was kind of like the ayahuasca capital of the world, but I went there being like, I don't want to do ayahuasca. Like things are going pretty good for me right now. And anyone that I had met had done ayahuasca to overcome some sort of life issue, whether it was trauma or addiction or stagnation. And I was like, I'm good. Like I'm having a pretty good ride here and I don't really want to mess it up. And then when I got to this eco village and found out it was an ayahuasca retreat, I was like, well, I'm not one for leaning on, oh, well, life just kind of happens and looking for the signs. But I was like, look, like I've intentionally not sought ayahuasca out and now I'm here and I'm kind of a yes man. So I'm like, well, it can't hurt. And funny enough, the revelation I had after ayahuasca was I no longer want to be a life traveler. I need to go to school. And it was at that moment I came out, I like left the jungle, I got to the internet cafe and I actually applied for Dalhousie like that week. And you don't really hear that too often. Like oftentimes people do ayahuasca to get out of that kind of frame. But for me, it was like, I'm ready to just kind of mature and maybe put this traveling stuff as like a lesser priority. And I kind of wanted to get serious about life and realize that education was like the next step for me.
Cool. And did you hear it like a message, or was it like intuition was clear and was able to make next voice or chapter in your life a realization?
It was just intuition. I mean, ayahuasca as a ceremonial practice and as an experience is very, very intense. It's visually intense. It's physically intense. It was a great experience for me, but coming out of it, I felt like I just kind of leveled up. Like I just experienced something I'd never experienced before. And a lot of the process of ayahuasca is reflecting after. So I kind of spent a couple of days just on my own, just going for walks and just processing. And it was this like intuitive thing. I was just like, I'm ready. I'm definitely ready.
Cool. I mean, again, what was the name of the place?
Iquitos.
Iquitos. And like, isn't the name Icaro? Icaro is like it's a shamanic song that is supposed to be heard inside of the ayahuasca experience. Like an Icaro is a traditional song, I believe, inside of that experience. Is that right? Is there a familiarity between those two words, Iquitos and Icaro, or no?
I never drew that conclusion, but I'm sure there is.
Interesting.
And during our ceremony, the shaman was singing the whole time for like 4 hours.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Fast forward, you have all this experience. Let's fast forward to making a choice. Was it about the industry or the space or the timing you were in? Throw yourself into this career path for you.
As an industry in general, it checked the boxes for me. Like it was solar as a whole, like morally aligned with it, ethically aligned with it. There's really no downside on like the user experience, on like the human experience. It's something that I could do local. It wasn't remote either. And so as like a role, it definitely checked the boxes. And then where I was at in the summer is we just bought a property. It was our second property. It was not something that we afforded or could afford at the time. We definitely leverage ourselves to get into this property. And I'm kind of doing a bit of a budget for the next 6 months. And I'm like, holy smokes, like I need to work now. And I'm not talking about just some random 3-month contract job. Like I need a job. I've got myself into a bit of a hole here, but I'm kind of like that. Like I need pressure to thrive. And I live on that precipice of chaos sometimes. And that's what works for me. And so I was actively looking, and that was kind of the driver for it. Honestly, it was like, hey man, fun time's over. You're a year off. That was great, but time to get back on the horse and drive again. Solar just as an industry checked, and then HQ as a company checked my boxes of just, you run the territory like a business. And that part I love. You guys are amazing and giving me full autonomy and flexibility over my own choices and who I hire and the actions I do. And I don't view you guys as like my bosses. It's more of like your business partners in this venture. And you gave me this incredible framework to work under, which as a business owner is so relieving. Knowing what to do and what not to do. You can get really caught up as an entrepreneur trying to figure out what not to do. Having like a cut and dry framework of you do A, B, C, and D, and this is the outcome, to me was just an incredible framework. So coming off of the summer, it was a no-brainer. And I just felt really good. It was the first time that I was like, yes, this is where I need to be.
I'm curious. So in that first interview, when we just first connected, what were your first thoughts or feelings around the company or the culture, or what the framework is? Like, where were you right and where were you potentially even wrong about what you thought it was going to be?
To tell you the truth, I was skeptical that it was not a scam, but like the job wasn't what it was described as. I was cautious because you guys gave me the time of day. You seemed to be really engaged in myself and what I wanted to do. And because you didn't have that layer of almost like contemplation, it kind of threw me off. I was like, these guys are all in. Like we had our third interview and it was like, yes, you're our guy. And I was like, that seems quick. But I guess being in sales, like, you guys have been trained to read people, understand people. And looking back, it's honestly really refreshing. But that was my first kind of hesitation. I was like, this just seems too good to be true. And the role that they're giving me seems like this absolute blank canvas that I can just run with. And I was like, that just seems like an opportunity that a lot of people should be fighting for. And so, yeah, that was my hesitation.
And for those who don't know, can you actually explain the role that you hold with HQ Energy? Just break it down. Like, there's probably a lot of people who have no idea of what you, even what we do for that matter.
Yeah. So I'm the territory manager for Lower Vancouver Island. I cover the areas of Victoria, North Saanich, West Shore, Souk. And my job is to manage a team of people with the sole purpose of selling solar and roofing deals. Inside of that, I manage a team of appointment setters, an assistant manager, and soon to be here, multiple closers. And so my day to day is I'm sitting deals, I'm closing deals. As the purpose of my role, it's keeping the team engaged 24/7. and keeping momentum moving at all times. It's a dynamic role in that there is no framework for what I need to do on a daily basis, but the outcome that needs to be achieved is obviously closing solar deals and closing roofing deals. It's just managing clients, managing my team's clients, making sure that the heartbeat of the organization is strong, and then keeping on top of my own deals. That's kind of the role in a nutshell.
And can you explain like what the learning curve has been like from starting with a strong entrepreneurial background, but getting into something like this? What's it been like for you, that transition?
The technical learning curve was actually quite easy. I didn't find that overly challenging. A lot of this stuff's pretty intuitive, and the role that we have, like, we don't need to know all the technical things. Like, we don't need to know breaker sizes for electrical systems and what kind of tech cable they're running for junction boxes, but just learning how kind of solar worked and integrated it into the home and roofing, like that came quite naturally. The biggest learning curve for me was learning the direct sales model and learning the sales process. And I'm still learning every day. I don't think that process ever ends, but getting over that first initial hurdle was probably took me 9 weeks of like actually banging my head against the wall until it kind of clicked. And then from then it's just constant improvement.
In direct sales, what's your overall feel like? Did you have a direct sales background? And then, yeah, how do you feel about it as a whole?
Jordan, but before you answer that, he's out there hustling kelp. That is the most direct sale, Jordan, I think ever. Hope you bring that up.
I never really considered it direct sales, but now that I'm looking back on it, 100% it is. We would go to like trade shows in Vancouver, like vegan trade shows, which ironically we shouldn't have been there because we were responsible for the murdering of tens of thousands of fish daily. And so, but we'd go to these trade shows and we would like be hustling. There'd be like 15 of us and we'd be like hustling kelp, and it was almost like a bazaar. It was this like extravaganza of people flooding in, and you're doing like cash sales, and you have like a little waistband of cash and change, and you're just hustling tins. And yes, there is some direct selling in that. The only other experience I had was I knocked doors in university for a painting company, and their model was absolutely garbage, but it gave me a good taste of my own skill set and just my own kind of personality. I found it quite easy, and I love talking to people. I'm just a natural extrovert, and I got a lot of enjoyment out of it because it was a challenge every day. And I thought about it as a game, and I kind of gamified the whole thing. And I think any good salesperson, you have to gamify it. Like, you can't take it personally or else you'll just get wrecked. And I succeeded quite quickly in that role. And I only did it for maybe 6 months. But funny enough, like, I had a friend at a high school that joined a security company, Vivint, and everyone kind of naturally went the organic route of school and looking for work and job. And he was like, I don't need any of that. And he joined Vivint at 17. And by the time I was going into my first year university, he was clearing like $700,000 a year. That guy now, he's retired. He wants to work when he needs to work, and he golfs, and I think he owns like 85 doors, and he's just kind of like a land baron now. And my whole time through school, I was like, I need to be in sales. And it was the biggest regret I had because I was a fishing guy that I never got into sales. And I kept like calling him up. Like, I go through my Facebook messages, and probably once a year I would hit him up, ask him about it. Like, is it still working for you? Oh yeah, man, I just launched a new territory down in Austin, Texas. And it just never seemed to get worse for him. Like, every year he was just leveling up lifestyle, his skill set, managing bigger teams. And I was envious. I was like, I think I made a mistake by not doing that. And it was always a calling I had, but I never knew how to kind of enter the space. And I think by the time that I actually was considering it, the whole security industry was kind of on the down, and that wave had already come. And I think part of this job, it was like, oh, I actually have another chance at this. I actually have a shot. I get my foot in the door, and maybe this could be a similar outcome for me and like a new industry.
Really cool. Yeah, I have a thought around that. Like, I mean, not everyone is built for it. Like, it's a pretty specific style of work that requires a pretty specific type of person. After knowing you now for over half a year, you're definitely built for it. Obviously, your friend was really built for it as well. If people are on the fence and they're sitting there listening to this and saying, like, could this work for me? What would you say to them? Like, what would that person have to be like? Or what would they have to think about for you to say, yeah, you're the right fit for something?
Just being in this space, I don't know if you can really assess the single archetype of person and say you're going to be a good fit for this and you're not. I'm blown away at the varying personalities and the various archetypes in sales. And it's wildly refreshing that we're not just all this cut and dry single type. I think fundamentally, the people that kind of make or break in this space, you have to be 3 things. You have to be wildly optimistic, almost like too optimistic. Like, you have to wake up every morning with blind faith that you're going to crush it. You have to be confident and just know that at some point in the process, whether it's a month, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, that you are going to get to a certain level because it's just a war of attrition. Like the harder you work, the more hours you put in and the more experience you get, just the better you become. And that never leaves you either. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think the folks that have grit, that have determination, and that have a desire to challenge themselves on a daily basis and enjoy that process. I think that's probably the biggest factor is like, do not be in sales if you want comfort. Do not pursue sales for comfortability. It's like living inside the risk. You're on the precipice of chaos always, but you learn to kind of master it and harness it, and it feeds you. And there's always uncertainty in what the day holds, but having enough experience, like I wake up every day, I'm not nervous anymore. I'm fired up. I'm like, I have 6 appointments today. I'm going to close at least 2 of these because I know like it's just in this unwavering faith. And so I think for folks that are wondering if it's a good fit for them, I think just look yourself in the mirror and just assess, like, am I capable of grinding myself through this process with some knowledge and with some certainty that on the other side, I'm going to see the light and I'm actually going to break through.
Love it. Well said. And I know we have a hard stop in 1 minute. Is that right?
So famously,
So we got the
Quinn,
last question.
famously, Jordan,
Yeah.
we have to ask you, why is the door still king?
I mean, for anyone in this space, I think it's an obvious question, but sales is such a human experience. And I think now more than ever, there's so much information out there, Instagram ads, Facebook ads, signage. For a lot of homeowners, it's really hard to cut through the noise and figure out what's actually true and what's a good company to work with. And when you're client facing, when you're front facing, 5-minute conversation will trump all of that. And you can instill so much faith and so much confidence, and you can connect with someone that you can't do any other way. And we are in like a human experience industry, and humans just enjoy other humans. And I think fundamentally, like, it will always dominate, and probably more so as time goes on, as we get more technical, as we get more screen based, online based, like the world's becoming more digital every day. And I think people are finding more value in just that human experience. I think for always and ever, doors will be king.
Thank you for your time
Love it.
today. Thanks for hopping
Yeah.
on, Jordan. That was
Thanks,
great.
Jordan.
Thanks, guys.